We're back here to the Dial In podcast. Let's give us a special a try real quick.
All right.
Cheers.
Probably my sixth of the day.
Oh, yeah.
That's good. Glad I didn't.
First thoughts?
Glad I didn't chug it.
Yeah. Well, I'm here today with a very special guest, all the way from Calgary, Alberta, Eric Watson. Eric has been in the real estate development industry for nearly 25 years. He's been a bit of a mentor of mine for the last couple of years in the real estate development field, and we're incredibly grateful to have him here today.
Oh, happy to be here.
Eric, can you just tell us a little bit about the last 25 years real estate development? Sort of 10,000-foot overview.
Yeah, where do you start? One of the questions I get all the time, or at least you get all the time. I'm not sure how many people I talk to anymore. Was how do you get into real estate development? It's not something you necessarily go to school for. I didn't. I took a degree in, it ultimately was geomatics engineering.
Okay.
I call it the degree from of deduction, because I knew I didn't like electrical engineering. I didn't like chemical engineering, so I just kept going through all the different engineering disciplines. I go, okay, well, this one kind of looks interesting.
Okay.
But by the time I graduated, I guess we're going back to 1998 now.
Okay.
We were in a recession. There weren't a lot of jobs. I didn't really have an interest in being a land surveyor.
Yeah.
Ended up writing. I built up a nice little stock portfolio. So I started trading stocks when I was actually 12.
Wow.
So I thank my parents. Took all the basically all the newspapers. If people know that newspapers actually used to get delivered.
Yeah, never seen one of those.
Yeah, and the 4:30 a.m. Paper routes, all that stuff, the summer jobs. Built up actually a little six-figure portfolio at a university.
Yeah.
Made a huge mistake. Poured a lot into one company. Was wondering what I won't say the name of it. I still remember it.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
And so when I didn't see any jobs that were interesting there, I wrote them a letter and just said, "Hey, Eric, blah blah blah." I said, "I'll take less salary. Just give me some options. I'm highly invested in your company, and I'm obviously really interested." Anyway, they gave me a job.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that's how I got my first job.
Wow.
I got in there, and I'm like, within a few months, and you start looking at them and go, "Oh no,
Yeah.
I'm going to lose a lot of money here."
Yeah.
And sure enough, it wasn't super liquid. This is back. There was still, I think, Alberta Stock Exchange back then.
Okay.
So before the venture exchange, TSX, and I think it ended up going bankrupt 2 years later.
Okay.
Anyway, so transition out of that, end up working in venture, basically for a venture capital firm as an analyst. Pitch them on an idea. So we're going back to .com 1.0.
Okay.
Right before the bubble had burst, I was working on all sorts of cool stuff. And at the time, I was interviewing for investment banking jobs as well. But I really liked the active venture capital, and go in there, get to work on all sorts of stuff like energy projects. They had done a hospital conversion, all sorts of stuff. But I pitched the partners on a technology idea on actually web-based collaboration software for the construction industry.
Huh. Funny enough. We're still doing that.
Back then, the biggest challenge was actually trades using the internet.
Yeah, believe it or not.
No, it was early, and they were also looking at this marketplace software. But we went down Silicon Valley. I'll say we ended up raising about $7 million in Canadian from the partners.
Yeah, and back then that's a significant seed.
Significant, not even. It's not even pre-seed. Pure right out of the gate, but I'll say they bought into the concept of it. I actually headed out to Toronto to help set stuff up there. I'm still in my my early 20s. We end up actually merging it with another group, and it goes go public on the venture exchange, and it kind of took on a life of its own. And I wanted to do something else, so I left that, and I decided to invest in a condo in Canmore, Alberta.
Your first project?
With a buddy. I said, you know what, real estate seems like a good spot to go do some stuff. This is like 2001 probably.
Okay.
And I still remember, I think we paid $230,000 for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo. It was like one of the OG vacation rental building
Yeah.
in Canmore before a lot of the other stuff had been built up.
Yeah.
I still remember, I think we did like 40,000 in revenue
Okay.
the first year. And I'm like, this is good. We should do more of these. Yeah. Anyway, we hit all to say, hit the cycle right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and I just got more people invested, and from that built up a management business. Actually started 2 brokerages. Okay. Started doing the pre-marketing, working with developers.
Okay.
On the pre-sales and the launch of the project. So this is back when the market was, hot, the recreational property boom.
Yeah.
As you're leading, all the way up to the financial crisis, but ended up acquiring a company out of Golden, BC. And my whole plan all along was that was just, I was like, okay, I need a foot. I was interested in Kicking Horse Mountain Resort. Mm-hmm. I was able to take that and a couple other little moves and effectively consolidate 90% of the lodging at Kicking Horse, and basically took control of the accommodation on the entire mountain. Okay. North of like 400 units.
Right.
And so now I have a company.
Yeah.
Went from there, then got in this particular case, I was like, sold the company, then got an opportunity to work with a group that was starting up, basically had signed a master development agreement with a large international brand in Wyndham to go build out the microtel by Wyndhams across the country. They had a couple of Marriott projects that were in the planning stages in Calgary, and and great partners, big financial depth. I'm like, okay, great, let's go do something, build something, and not have to worry about we have to worry about the money, but it's at least the capital's there.
Yeah.
Fast forward 7 years of building, developing ground up hotels. Like we didn't do, that was the focus, was development, construction, and operations. So we're one of the few vertically integrated, we'll say, hotel companies in Canada. It's a model much more common in the US.
Okay.
I looked at a sector that had really caught my attention while I was developing the hotels, which was, we'll call it the wellness space, but for Canadians that know a lot of them, like Nordic, whether you want to call them Nordic spas or thermal spas. And my first experience with one was, I still remember it vividly, was in Whistler. Okay. Going to the ICSC conference, which see a lot of real estate people would be familiar with or have attended. Certainly those that are in the commercial retail. Okay. And I was just looking. Actually, body was beat up from some squash matches, right? Looking for a massage. Yeah. I'm like, I was looking online as you do, right? Yeah. Looking for a massage in Whistler. Yeah. And I remember stumbling on their website and going, oh, this looks cool, right? Like, look at these hot pools and all that stuff. It looks like a cool spot to go have a massage. Yeah. And so anyway, I go there, and I go there a little bit early, right? And get in the hot pool. And I still remember like looking at the cold pool and dipping my foot in and going, okay, no. Yeah. What the F? What is this? Yeah. Right. That was the first time. And I'm like, because there's like almost nothing out there publicly about, the hot, cold, the contrast therapy. Yeah. Like there was no Joe Rogan podcast talking about it. There was none of that. Right. Yeah. Awareness that, there is today. And even when we started this 4 years ago, it's, there's been a huge change in the awareness of that. But anyway, so I went back the year after, and I looked at it a little bit more, started to do the cycle, and it's like, oh my God, body feels amazing. Yeah. And then as a hotel guy, I'm looking at the operation, I'm going, this is really interesting. Yeah. There's a lot of people here. They don't have to staff it overnight. They don't So I just got interested. And I was working on my hotel program in Quebec and trying to raise capital. Yeah. And I knew that a pension fund in Quebec had invested in this, everyone knows someone in Whistler, it's kind of enough. Yeah. So I remember just meeting with them, looking for capital for the hotels. And I brought it up purposely. Yeah. And I'm like, how are your spas doing? Yeah. And they're like, great. Yeah. They're like, yeah, really good. they're like, I'm like, are you expanding them? I said, we'd love to.
Yeah.
And they're like, they're just, and I said, how do they do? They said, like, Eric, like, listen, I said, if we showed you the results of this, you'll not want to do another hotel in your life.
Wow.
And I remember going, interesting. Just put that in my, back of my mind.
Yeah.
And so I guess you're not financing our hotels, but
Yeah.
and they didn't.
They just give you a great concept.
Yeah, they just validated
Yeah.
something that I was like interested in. And then there was some other things that came to me where people had numbers and experience with other Nordic spas, thermal spas.
Yeah.
And then Kananaskis, I remember when Kananaskis was being built, Nordic spa back in Alberta. And, so fast forward, former partner of mine, it was YPO with me. She phones me out of the blue, like 4 years ago. She said, hey, what are you up to? And she's like, I'm after 30 years, I'm leaving. And she was the president of this other group.
Yeah.
That we'd worked on a deal in Saskatchewan. And she's like, I'm leaving. They don't want to grow anymore, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, and she's like, what are you up to? And at the time, I was just looking at I was looking at one in Kelowna, looking at something down in the U.S., and a couple of them really resonated. I'm like, man, I think these would be great spots for the Nordic spa or thermal spa, right?
Yeah.
She said, so I kind of talked about, a few things I was working on. Actually, maybe the club at the time too.
Yeah.
We were repositioning in downtown Calgary, and I'm like, but the space that I really love, or I think is just a huge opportunity because it doesn't there's just not anything around that you can use as these spas.
Yeah.
And she's like, stop right there. She's like, she goes, been looking at investing in one. I love the space.
Yeah.
She's like, you need to meet Hank.
Yeah.
So anyway, we get together at this club downtown.
Yeah.
I was working on the meeting there. And we started to strategize. And actually, I didn't even know that, but Hank, it was the CEO of a modular construction company.
Okay.
I vaguely remembered him. I knew of what he had done, but he was the guy, the guy that had the concept for Kananaskis, ended up developing it, building it with his own hands, operating it.
Yeah.
He was with a land partnership with the owner of the hotel there, and Hank had actually been pitching me on modular construction for my hotels.
Okay.
Earlier, and I was like, but anyway, great guy anyway. And we just started to like basically, over time, as these things do, machinate like what's the opportunity, what's the strategy, like what's the problem that we're trying to solve here. And ultimately we got to that thesis, and a big part of that too is obviously the acquisition of real estate that would enable us to do that.
Yeah.
Which is I think it's definitely proven out over time.
Yeah.
We can talk more about what those are, but it's a fascinating business, and that our whole mission is to democratize wellness for people. It's wellness, traditional wellness has become too expensive, and that's because it's a lot of it is just point to point, right? Like you need you've got one human to one customer, right? And it's not just one. Like if you think about having a massage, someone may probably they might have checked you in.
Yeah.
There's someone doing, the accounting. There's more than, it could be anywhere from like 1.2 to 2 people,
Yeah.
Behind that, therapy, which just makes it expensive. And then, you were in there for 50 minutes and someone, rubbed you feel kind of okay, but you didn't get a lot for it.
Yeah.
And, the only way to scale that business is to add more people.
Yeah.
And I think the value equation on a lot of, while it's great, and then there's a huge market for all forms of different wellness, what's really compelling about what we set out to do 4 years ago was that, we build the infrastructure in this environment and everything, most of what we offer is self-guided. We can have 200, 300, guests in a place and, 10 employees.
Yeah.
It's a very different model. And with that, because of that, you can make it far more affordable.
Yes.
Right? People get in for, maybe as little as $60 or $80, spend 2, 3, 4 hours. You obviously can run higher than that. And then all the other things are just add-ons, but because you have a captured audience.
Yeah.
Right? You have, a lot like, in food and beverage, the catering business is, and, tends to be far more profitable than running, running your table service on a restaurant, right? Because you got set menus, exactly what it is. It's all pre-planned. So anyway, I'll just say that that part from an operational perspective, while not inconsequential, like coming from my, the background that I had, I was like, I love it. And so the throughputs are great, the margins were great, but we actually have a chance here to take urban real estate, urban and suburban predominantly. Not to say we're not working in some destinations as well, which is where you'll find perhaps more of the experiences today. But they do in Europe in particular, where there's 6,200, a lot of times you will see them in the cities. And ultimately the ones that have done the best and obviously would have the most impact, get the most amount of people. I'll say impact is getting the most amount of people through that can experience wellness and improve, mental, physical being, is by putting it close to where they live, which makes it accessible. So, but how do you do that, and how do you create this magical, magical outdoor oasis and experience in the biggest markets in North America, and give people that space? Is not an easy solution, but with COVID happening, the structural downturn of a lot of particularly Class B office, and there's a variety of other use cases, whether that's in combination, how do you differentiate a hotel property or a resort property? How do you differentiate your residential development in terms of how the form of wellness that we're doing, which we call, so is very much in the theme of social wellness. It's not just about rejuvenation, it's about connection, and which is a big missing link, I think, in wellness today. And certainly, a lot of people are starting to pay attention to it. But we have a very strong belief in the connection to the outdoors and doing certain things and making it social, making it approachable, et cetera. But in doing that, we've had an unbelievable response from real estate owners, other call it developers, co-developers, is they start to really look at that in terms of how we can either whether it's reimagining, transforming their real estate, just gaining a competitive advantage, keeping competitive market share too. It's fascinating. We've been lucky to be able to deal with some of the biggest, some of the institutional players, and putting this out. It's a long process, but we're on our way now.
Well, you have a very impressive resume and background. It sounds like basically your career has been a series of projects, a number of projects, whether it was hotels, whether it was residential, condominiums, and you've worn many hats, from an operations standpoint, from a sales standpoint, from a staffing standpoint, from putting the deal together, raising funds, and your career has ultimately led you to this wellness play of real estate development now.
Yeah, I call it like a culmination of everything, which, there's probably very little intent along the way. So it's like happenstance, but yeah, absolutely. And I will say, like, people, like particular real estate owners and developers developers need great operators. And you need them at the table at the beginning. I think we're very experienced in development and be good developers. And there's a lot of things that are very specialized about what we do, but ultimately, I always tell everyone, like, we're there to operate. The development is getting from point A to point B in the journey, but we want what we really want and enjoy is the point B to infinity, I guess.
Well, it sounds like you've been really good at getting it from point A to point B. That's really been your skill set. So people know when they deal with you, you're really good at bringing a vision to life, getting people on board, getting the buy-in, putting together the proper business model. How have you been able to show something before it was even a concept yet, before you put together your initial concepts?
I think it's improved a lot since we started. Like, as it's interesting as you kind of, you work through your vision, but I would say, like, visualization, not meditation.
Yeah.
Visualization of the concept has been critical.
Yeah.
So, and then the more you can activate that and bring that, like people, like I always say, every real estate investor too, everyone we deal with everyone's a human.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and there's an emotional connection. You have to create that emotional connection, and they have to be able to see what you're doing.
Yeah.
In order to do that effectively, you're telling a story.
Yes.
So the ability to have great visualization, assets, so that started for us as static 2D. Well, even though they're built out of 3D models.
Yeah.
That go into beautiful slide decks.
Yeah.
But nothing beats the ability to show something like Scelta does in 3D.
Yeah. And immerse yourself.
Immerse yourself. Yeah, it's like you want to be able to put them into that experience almost in a virtual reality way.
Yeah.
Like I remember even back, the microtels are not, they're kind of, let's face it, they're not the most interesting box in the world, but they're, they're not. I mean, we had a clean, nice looking hotel box, but I even had the basically took the 3D goggles. So we did, we modeled out. So like I would even, whether it was appraisers or potential partners, so you could like walk through our prototype.
Yeah.
And it still makes, even though you get a little nauseous with those glasses.
You do sometimes. Yeah.
But I mean, it was, that was, and I did that maybe, almost 10 years ago now, right? It was like at the front end of that. And it was, it was a great, it was a great tool. So I think it's critical. I see so many different use cases for, what you guys do.
Yeah.
And it's, and I said, it's critical to selling, conveying. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're selling. Yeah. selling the concept, particularly for what we do. Yes. Right. Which is such an experiential, emotional thing. Yeah. The only thing we need you to do is throw some sense in there for us somehow, get the, so we can get all, we say we have the six senses. And so the six, obviously everyone knows the five. Yeah. Traditional, the six is digital.
Yes.
And that's also integrated into what we're doing too. And we need to so we're also trying to find that balance between creating that something very natural, very authentic, but also giving people the feedback they want, whether that's through the, your Apple Watch or through the biometrics, data, all that stuff, and doing it in a way that's it's on your terms. Yeah, it's available. You take what you want from it.
Yeah, we track all that through the Whoop.
Yeah,
we're big Whoop users.
Another squash guy, right?
The squash founder.
Yeah, exactly from Harvard.
Played for Harvard. Yeah. So it sounds like when you're putting together a deal or a real estate development, obviously the numbers have to make sense first and foremost. But you were mentioning earlier when we were chatting that a lot of these real estate developers, if they're just using the traditional model of, say, a condominium or an office space, they don't realize the potential of putting in this wellness center, right? Yeah. Because you mentioned they don't have to stay overnight. It's a new vehicle and how large is the market right now for wellness centers?
Well, I mean, wellness is obviously it become an overused word, or it's a very broad brush. I mean, the overall global market's in the trillions. So you've got to pull it back into there's a huge unrealized market, particularly in what we call thermal wellness, thermal spa space, which is, let's call it contrast therapy. Okay. Listen, the gyms, the Equinoxes and the Lifetime Fitness of the world. I mean, the Detroit Athletic Club, right? You have the sauna, you have the steam, you got the hot tub, you got the cold plunge, and that's I think that's great. I say it's a bit, it's like a transactional experience, though, right? Yeah. Like it's you've done you didn't. Well, some people do, but most people didn't go there for that. It's just maybe a little part of the routine. Yeah, and I often equate it's like it's like going having Subway for lunch or dinner or whatever versus like going out, to that ultimate restaurant that you do once, maybe once or twice a year. Yeah. And it's the full experience, right? Mm-hmm. And so the more that gyms, the more that, let's say, a residential complex which will do this on a much smaller scale than what, like, let's say our big commercial stuff is, but we are working with residential groups too. So may implement. It's all great because it gets people, into contrast, understanding the benefits of contrast, and saying, and then what we do is provide this, it's like the Disneyland, right, of the Disneyland of wellness. We say, and we've actually had people, without prompting them, echo that back when they see what we're doing. They're like, oh my God, this is like, because it's for adults only. This is this is amazing, right? And it really is, because it's like it's a we call it the wellness, hospitality, social wellness experience.
Yes,
and it's an experience. Having it in your gym isn't an experience. It's great, and it's something something to go do for recovery. But it's the furthest thing from an experience.
We notice when you provide an experience, you create extreme brand loyalty. Right. So our concept here at Scelta is dial in. So we have our espresso beans that are dial in. It's a lifestyle. We run hill sprints every Sunday as a team, and some of our clients. It's
glad I'm not here.
But that's sort of our form of wellness, and I think why a lot of contractors like working with us is it's sort of like you're not just buying the technology, you're not just buying the condo, you're buying the experience. The experience of meeting us boots in the ground, being a part of the community, the wellness side of things. I think encompassing the whole experience, how important that is to get people to buy into the brand, right? And you're building a brand right now.
We're building a brand, it's called LUM'AIS. So the LUM stands for fire.
Yes.
And AIS is a derivation, and it's also expressed as, we don't write it that way, but more commonly EIS. So some ancient languages is ice. So it's fire and ice.
I like that.
Hot and cold. That's what we do. So that's where the name came from.
So our definition of a brand is an expectation. At LUM'AIS, how would you define a brand, and how do you build a brand?
I mean, well, you build it from consistently delivering great experiences. So I think that is what will ultimately build it into a brand. I mean, right now it's a name. Right.
A cool name.
It's a cool name, but we, and I think it provides for, a lot about building brand is about, storytelling. Right. And authenticity, and, they have to resonate. So it's like, we're very, very cognizant. One of the ladies who works with us, heads up, let's say, the marketing, unbelievable, experience in building brand. She actually built up Nike's lifestyle brand. She was on the pitch Phil night on it.
Wow, that's incredible.
So like I'm a brand. I'm definitely a brand guy. And and there's lots of it's interesting because a lot of decisions and hard decisions sometimes you have to make. In developing something, you have constraints with capital. You have all sorts of things that, and I think sometimes it's easy to make it can be easy to make decisions that take you off of, what that brand identity should be. So, I think the greatest brands in the world, generally don't compromise in terms of, who they are and what they are. So, I mean, I'm hopeful that we're able to, to ultimately deliver on that as these, scale up across North America. But I think what people will experience with what we're doing, regardless of the location whether they're in, an urban core environment where we've got, an awesome rooftop setup, with which is going to have a little bit more noise around it, but embrace the social side to that, idyllic oasis in the forest and the pond, in the suburbs of the city, is that they're going to see that consistently, great experience. And I'm not talking like Four Seasons pampering, like it's, it is what it is, what we'll deliver. And that's, and it's rooted in the well. So most of what people will see will be 80%, but we want to keep those surprises back, and everything we do connect it back to the location. In a way that's both authentic to the location, but also authentic to the brand. And then, from us, from a wellness perspective, we're really, really we want to push the social and a little bit of the edginess side. I said, like, if we come across a project where maybe we just don't have enough of the outdoor space, and that's a good example of where we're almost entirely uncompromising.
Yeah.
And that I say it's easy for someone to go think about putting a bunch of saunas, steams, some cold plunges, hot, and put it in a building.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, nice, good for you. Go do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not us.
Right.
Right. This is about we think that connection to the outdoors is essential. The environment, it's all about, and it's not that we don't have stuff indoors too. Is part of the magic. The social side is the uncompromising part as well. So while we want relaxation areas, quiet areas, and social areas, but I said if we ever set with the challenge of, well, which one do you default to? Yeah. We're going to default to social.
What are those intangibles? So you mentioned social. So you were mentioning if someone puts in some hot tubs, a cold plunge, just a couple saunas inside of a building.
Yeah.
What makes that LUM'AIS versus just a building with some assets inside of it?
Yeah, I think it's how it's all kind of connected together.
Yeah.
And programmed is an essential component. Because at the end of the day, I mean, anyone with 40, 50 million bucks. Yeah. You're right. I'll say part of the intangible is scale.
Yes.
So that's one. So what's the differentiator is if you go to a place, and I've been to many that have what we'll call one circuit, maybe two circuits. Mm-hmm. You kind of threw it, and I could say you're like, it was good. Yeah. I mean, it was nice. I got what I had to do. But if you go to LUM'AIS and you spend 4 hours, you didn't get to do everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
And not only that, it's how you design spaces and program around that. Whether that's from the events, the event sauna rituals to the meditation, to how food and how we work food and beverage into it, how you meld special events to drive people back, how you integrate different environments from, let's say, daytime to evening. Yeah. As we were able to change, almost like systematically change mood. Yeah. Right. Those create different experiences that we think will drive people back, more and more, and become these differentiators. But there's a lot of intangible, right? It's going to be a feeling. Yeah. That you have as you go there, but also, the scale of it is important as well. And then I think, there'll be tools with, gamification, loyalty. Yeah. Like I said, the digital side where, we're building the software because we looked at all the software in the industry. There's some, again, it was programmed for a different use. Mm-hmm. It's still a valid case, but how do we elevate the experience? Yeah. The guest experience in terms of even booking. What's one of the biggest frustrations of going to a lot of these places that we know guests have. We did, off track, but we did really detailed market research. We had over 1,000 surveys done, 16 different markets. Yeah. With dozens of in-person interviews that we did across all of this. So we've got, I think, some of the most in-depth market research that never released to the public. Yeah, proprietary. That we've again, let's say some validation of what we believe. Yeah. So it's I think ultimately if we've got the team that can scale it too. Mm-hmm. That so in terms of brand. I guess you can build brand on one location. Yeah, but to start with. But ultimately, we believe in the opportunity to create something, across North America. It's, Canada's got more going on than the U.S. So I'll say, a lot of our focus is in the U.S. Yeah. But there's tons of opportunity in Canada as well. Yeah. And there's different ways, I think what's magical about it too, even though as a core brand, the core of what LUM'AIS is doing is at a certain scale. Mm-hmm. We are working with developers because we want to see that, we want to see this everywhere. It's good for people. Yeah. That on some smaller concepts and some things that we're not going to brand LUM'AIS, be inspired by LUM'AIS, managed by LUM'AIS, that are in process right now. And some of the stuff you talked about, with residential towers and things like how do we look at your space and how do we create value through wellness? Yeah. Yeah.
we noticed that the way that developers are sticking out and differentiating themselves, even just here in Windsor and some clients down in London, is that the common spaces are so important.
Yep.
So a lot of these are mid-rise, say 5 to 7 story buildings. They may have, your 2-bed, 2-bath standard unit. Most floor plans look the same. There's not a lot of room to differentiate. Maybe your finishes are a bit nicer, but it's really, what does the gym look like?
Yeah.
What does the party room look like? Is there a business center? Is there a dog park, right? These are all things that people care a lot more about. And we noticed in our Scelta tours, our tours that get the most traction aren't the units themselves, they're the common spaces.
Yeah. And then I smile because it's like how much they actually get used. And
Right.
so why don't developers put more money into that? And the answer is obvious. I'm a developer, is because they get no return on the square footage.
Right.
Right. Other than, because there's a limitation. So we work with developers like in commercializing
Yeah.
unused space.
Okay.
Like rooftops.
Yeah.
Okay. You put a rooftop deck up there that gets used once in a while with some
Yeah.
barbecues or something nice, sexy selling thing.
Yeah.
We throw everything up. Show you how to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right. Like and activate whether it's underutilized space, space that I think a lot of developers don't think about. Well, I think it's not that they don't, but it's like again, how do you go and execute on that, and then operate it, right? I mean, depending on the scale.
Yeah.
Of what it is, because that's a challenge. So like we've got all sorts of those use cases where we're literally taking space that is not perform, either exists and isn't performing, and we're close transforming it, or even looking at like a master planned residential community.
Yeah.
Also, go spend $20 million on your your community building, which you get gets handed over to the HOA
Yeah.
or condo association or wherever you live.
Yeah.
And creates a cost that the residential owners have to pay, so the condo fees are higher, making it harder to sell the real estate.
Yeah.
Or can you actually develop something? And the answer is yes. This is what we're doing, right? That is this amazing, Wellsmith has all the things you just talked about. Maybe not the dog park, but that can be put somewhere else.
Yeah.
we're not doing day spas for dogs yet, but
Not
the
yet.
but the fitness, let's say the meeting space.
Yeah.
How do you make food and how do you make neighborhood food and beverage work? Well, we can make it work because we've got basically all these clients coming out all the way. So, okay, we can elevate all sorts of things.
Yeah.
We'll have a little community market. Well, we already have the market for the spot, as an example.
Yeah.
And instead of you investing $20 million, which is just capital investment over a project or whatever the number is, and it's it's 5 million, 10 million, or 50 million.
Yeah.
Now you're getting a financial return on it.
Yeah.
And I think you end up with something that is sustainable from an operational perspective as well. And to me, and I think most of once we go through it with the developers, they agree
Yeah.
that this is a way better plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're getting a lot of traction there too.
Well, your performers probably are a lot stronger than most, right? Because most are just looking at what their return is per square foot inside the units.
Yep.
They're not looking at a return inside of those common areas.
No, they're not. No, and then we flip that over.
Yeah.
Plus, creating a huge differentiator
Yeah.
against all the other developments that are out there, right?
Yeah.
I would say the only thing a resident in a community might care about, there's two things: is noise and traffic.
Okay.
And I could tell you, like, a school generates way more traffic.
Yeah.
Because it creates peak load. These things. Yes, even if you brought in 500 people a day, they're flowing through over 12, 14 hours.
Yes.
2 people a vehicle, et cetera. It's like people, tend to do these as shared experiences. So it's, once we show it doesn't actually have in communities like that, the traffic impact is very nominal.
Yeah.
Noise wise, I mean, it's an outdoor spa. It's
Yeah.
pretty quiet.
Yeah. Well, so our Scelta platform is used for pre-sales, pre-leasing,
Yep.
validation. Can you talk a little bit about that interesting model we were talking about for pre-memberships and getting
Yeah.
signups?
So I mean, one of the things, I mean, there's lots of different use cases in terms of where that can be helpful. I mean, one is, let's say we're selling our vision to an AHJ, so authority having jurisdiction.
Okay.
When you're in particular, let's say on a rezoning,
Yeah.
or anything like that. Again, the visualization tools are, I wouldn't call them, I mean, essential, but extraordinarily helpful. I mean, that's a big, that's a huge decision. Like if you don't get zoning, you don't get a project. So
Yeah.
I'd say it's also opening, so tools like that. And if you get the zoning, that can help, with what we're finding too is developers gain, whether that's bonus density, you can transfer because we're kind of a low FAR, so in terms of how you move things around the site. But yeah, one of the other great, I think, use cases is like we're looking at one particular project where there'd be an integration with as a high-end athletic club and which would include some hotel rooms, but and anchored by LUM'AIS. But how do you get as you're developing this, it's an adaptive reuse, and you want to pre-sell memberships.
Yeah.
Again, how do you whether you're pre-selling memberships or you're pre-selling condos or you're frankly even pre-selling apartments and trying to create, a list of interested tenants, because all of a sudden that market's a little harder now too, right? Like, so it's like, how do you create interest up front to pre-sell? Like what Scelta's doing is critical.
Yeah.
Like I think it's essential to be able to provide that level of visualization, create urgency, and again, these are all emotion. These are as much emotional as they are practical decisions for people, because it's like the choice they have in any of these things is to wait.
Yeah.
Right. So, and we all know that as as a developer owner, like that doesn't help you.
No, it's expensive to wait.
It's expensive to wait, and it's and my financing. I did one of the projects I was involved in downtown Calgary. Yeah. The financing that we got, basically the debt was subject to getting pre-sales.
Yeah. Pre-sales of memberships.
Yeah. And building like the interest. Like obviously we couldn't necessarily take some of their money, but they all had their deposits down. We had the subscriptions. Yeah. And at that time we didn't use. You weren't right. I don't know if you were around doing that yet, but we didn't use it. But I go, it would have been a whole lot better if we had. Yeah. It was still good, but again, I think the one we're working on now, it's we definitely will. So it's like
Well, that Seattle project that we were working on, can you tell listeners a little bit about that experience and the concept and what the job was to do?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, I guess, the clubhouse discussion. That was one of a few examples where that is, and to be able to show. So they were, in this particular case, already going down the path of developing the clubhouse out, and they're land developers. So I mean, their job is to sell lots, right? Yeah. And create interest. So they feel like whether it's the clubhouse or whatever else, the reason that they do it is to sell. Yeah. And so to have the visualization tools and the stuff that you put together to help show the vision. Yeah. To land, it accelerates sales, which is almost in land development it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of what you're like your returns are made at the end of the project, and obviously your IRR is driven by how quickly you move through it. Yeah. So an investment in something like this, I mean, it just makes total sense. So taking I think the activation of the site plans that you do, like the first level, is kind of like, I mean, that's a good start, like to just maybe warm up, warm up the concept, and then as you take it further into like those full 3D visualizations that you're doing, like that's where I think I tell every developer, just go straight to that. That's what you need. That's what you want. Yeah.
And then you've been a part of projects that have been 6, 8, maybe a couple of years long, right? In that pre-development process.
Yeah.
How did you keep everyone on the same page? Like, because our client portal tool that we were talking about, how do you make sure that everyone has the documentation they need, they know what's happening, they know the key dates? What's your go-to right now?
Oh, for software? Yeah, when we manage stuff at the moment through through Teams, and we use some project collaboration software as well. The build, I mean, the GC side is again, depends who we end up using, but the particular one that one of the partners we have is definitely big into Procore. For example, totally. So having that all that all tied together is critical. I mean, it can be, like, I would say the typical, between design, like as we go through and move through the design phase. So design can take, again, depends on the complexity of the project, but certainly no less than a few months. Easily 6+ months, right? And then going through the entitlement and the, if needed on land, but the permitting process and the rest. And then as you move through construction, and then even the integration of, like, we start the operational setup almost like the minute the shovels hit the ground. Like we have over thousands of things on our pre-opening list that have to get executed. So as you move through a project like that, how information flows is particularly, you can maybe manage it on one project. But if you've got more than one project going, managing that. I mean, the other, I guess the option is to throw more bodies at it, which is really expensive, right? I'll throw another project manager on. We're very technology focused, so always looking for the tools that enable people to just be way more efficient, to be able to do more. So when you start to think about, as you guys, I think, are building through here, right, with what AI is capable of doing, and if you have through the data in a data warehouse or whatever you want to call it, but the ability, like, to use, as an example, natural language to go say, hey, hey, where's this at, right? Versus having, go look through a bunch of stuff and then it, basically pulling, like, that would be, heaven. You're
talking like our foundation AI.
I haven't even looked at it yet, but you were describing it to me. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what we need. Right. Cause that's what, well, it's the time, the time is money, but it's just like, yes, like it's going, like, the complexity, and a lot of times you're on the go too, right? And it's just like, you've got people on the field, and it's like, okay, well, you can't, it's just hard to manage everything, right? Mostly, I have to get back, or it's, tough on a phone. Like, so any of that technology, I think, is where you can, improve the flow of information. The productivity is massively important. And most of the tools that we've seen and used, again, are either very structured, right, like as a Procore would be. Construction management's a little different, or the development side is, tends to be very free flowing. Right. Or the tools that are less rigid. And you set up these processes, but again, it's like, someone sends me a Gantt chart with, let's say as an executive with, whatever number of tasks. That's not really what I want.
Well, our North Star with the portal is to get people the right information to the right people at the right time. That's really what we're going after. And this whole concept we're doing now is called the global dashboard, because we noticed on our portal projects, you'd have multiple workspaces and you have multiple projects open at a time. But clients were jumping between workspaces. So they'd be like, oh, I'm going to go on this kind of project. I'm going to jump back over to this medical facility. They were going between projects. So they had asked us in the field if you can have one cohesive global dashboard where it's a consistent feed of all the projects. So then you have your key metrics of all your projects, and you can customize your key metrics as to what you want to know about all your projects. And then that layer of foundation AI that we were talking about, that's where we want to be able to, okay, now all your projects are in the same place. Now you can talk to your data. So you can ask questions, but reference all your projects. If you need to hyper focus on one project, you can, but it's nice to have it all at a glance.
Beautiful.
Yeah. For someone like you who's managing so many projects at once, right?
Yeah, no, we're all for that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
we're big believers in, the technology and the AI side. We use the generative AI stuff all the time.
Yeah.
For different things, and that's been, from a productivity point of view, game changing.
Yeah.
Just, obviously, word of warning, everyone, you need to check your data sources because it's definitely not always right.
Right.
Yeah.
But the AI tools that are out there right now, they go very wide, right? Like
They
you're
go
searching the entire web. We really want to go deep
Yeah.
into just like your company and other companies and proprietary databases, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and in that case, is assuming the information that's within those databases is accurate.
Yeah, of course.
You'll get accurate feedback out of it.
Yeah,
Garbage in, garbage out. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
So we always ask guests too about dial in. So how do you got a few projects on the go, you got to get you got that 1,000-item list to get a project off the ground. You just need to dial in, right? You're starting the day, you're in the office. How do you personally just dial in and get to it?
Well, it's usually about 3:30 in the morning.
Okay. David Goggins, all right.
Yeah. No, that's my average start time would be that early. So I usually have a good day in.
Yeah.
Ahead of
Before the day starts.
Before the day starts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, the dialing in part starts early.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I mean, I'm thinking about, the flow, and I don't love looking at email as as an example too. And I like, if I could get like little, just the information I need in small tidbits, like, and it's all about like flagging exception.
Yeah.
Right. Like, is there something I really, that I need to pay attention to that elevates?
Yeah.
There too. Like, so but yeah, I take my, I manage my time and my day. Like I tend to I like to move meetings a little bit later too. Right.
Yeah.
And get to the creative, I'll say the creative or the thinking stuff early.
Yeah.
Uninterrupted. And that's how I would dial in. But, I mean, Teams is, listen, I mean, if you're not running that, I mean, Teams is nice.
Yeah.
It's
Microsoft's not going anywhere anytime soon.
No,
so.
it's not. It's it's not my favorite thing in the world either. But
but it's the norm. It's what everyone defaults to, right? It's your drives, your OneDrive, your email, your Outlook.
All that. Yeah. Email drives me berserk.
Yeah. So in a perfect world, what is a better alternative to email?
Well, I think, and this is a little bit like this, the spa experience. Everyone's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So whatever I say might be different for somebody else.
Yeah.
So the ability for a user to basically say, this is how I like to communicate.
Yeah.
It's how I like to get information. So if you can have technology adapt to the user, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Because sending information to out to, like, so you got 500 employees, they all have different learning style. Like it's just like, it's, unless you speak to them the way they want to be spoken to.
Yeah.
They're gonna, a lot of them will ignore it.
Yeah.
Defer it, whatever, right? Like, so it's like, I mean, some people are just like, they're maniacal. They'll clean everything out of their email box.
Right.
My partner like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's what she does. I'm like, I stream stuff, and if I don't see something that's important, like, I just, I'll either file it or I just let it, I let it go.
Yeah.
Right. Unless, like I said, or it might hit somewhere, I'll come back to it. Right. I'll make, I make a note.
Yeah.
Of, okay, well, this is on my list of to-dos, but it's not, it's not a critical priority.
Yeah.
Either. So, thinking about, what that is. And I think, again, now the software has the ability, maybe even the ability to learn.
Yeah.
And tell me what I think is important.
Right.
Right. So I think the opportunity there is really, really interesting in terms of how that could get done.
Yeah.
And I understand, like, a lot of companies will still want to have structured information and reports.
Yes.
I don't think those are going to go anywhere. I think there's some safety that's probably perceived by a lot of executives in having that.
Yeah.
Whether there's true, whether that has true value or not, I think is totally debatable. Maybe a different conversation altogether. But
Yeah. I know the minds of our product engineers and our chief branding officer are buzzing right now because your concept and the thread of everyone has a different way that they want to see things.
Yeah.
Very much in line with this global dashboard functionality is like leaving it up to you to choose the elements that you want to see. Right. And thinking about enterprise level, right? Because you mentioned executives are still going to want reports.
Yeah.
It makes them feel safe having reports.
Yeah.
But let's think about 90% of the other companies who aren't enterprise level companies, and they just want to see what's important to them, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you having worked at enterprise level companies, having worked at mid-sized companies, what do you see as sort of the technology adoption rate from an enterprise level? It's almost like a mandate nowadays, but more so from these smaller companies that you may have worked at or work with.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we had lots of conversation about this even internally.
Yeah,
and through some of the the channels that we receive information, lots of interesting conversation on. So what we're hearing on an enterprise level is that there's a general fear. Well, I want to say fear, but perspective. And this might be a little bit premature, and I'll say you overstated that SaaS is dead.
Yeah.
But if you think of so there's in insourcing out, and what's happening is because of AI and where things are going, with how things can get programmed and stuff. It's like, it's totally disrupting that, and that to me makes some sense at the enterprise level.
Yes.
Where they have the resources to maybe, start to think about, because you can build things for like a fraction of what used to be like
in-house.
In-house, and how you manage that, and where data resides with cybersecurity issues and all sorts of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Becomes, but to me that's, those are things only larger organizations have the resources to get their head around.
Yeah.
I still believe that, small, medium-sized, they can't spend the time to be worried.
Yeah.
About that. So I had this, my argument was like, I can see where maybe that's going.
Yeah.
Large scale, and maybe eventually, the AI capability gets so good that, that can filter all the way down that I just have to say, hey, this is what I need. But even then, if you don't know, like most people don't even know what they want, right? Like we had that conversation earlier. It's like, is actually, is your software is always going to be as good as how you've planned it and designed it and what, and inspect it. Like, so the value, I think there's more and more value coming to those that can define the problem well, and
100%.
And actually say, okay, this is how it needs to work. Because I think we're a long ways away, from what I've seen from AI, kind of figuring that out, like totally replacing the human brain. And hopefully that, hopefully not in my lifetime, but I was like, anyway, there's going to be some jobs left for us.
Yeah.
But I just don't think, I can't see in the foreseeable future. But with that said, it's going to be great because I do see, the cost of software ultimately coming down.
Yeah.
Get more competitive, like electronics have over the years, right?
Yeah.
That if it just gets easier and easier to less costly to build it, more competition, etc. But go back to the whole thing about brand, right, and experience, and like other aspects. So it's like I do think my experiences with Silicon Valley is the ideas and actually the capabilities are usually way ahead of where it actually gets implemented.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the most brilliant points you just made there too is those who can define the problem the best are going to win in the long term, right? I think that's something to really a key takeaway of the future and what we're going into is those who can define the problem, design the solution, and implement it in a way that's easy and accessible, right? Because Procore, who you mentioned, I mean, I remember spending 3 months learning Procore before I was fully up and running and knowing how to use it. And I'm someone who comes from a bit more of a tech-savvy background. Try going on a construction site, teaching someone how to use Procore. I mean, they're going to kick you off site. Yeah. Right? So I think the ease of use as well is going to be such a key factor.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I found that out 20-some years ago, right? It's like, the trades are like, what is this thing? No. Yeah. We still use the fax machine. Yeah. Like literally. Yeah. That was the biggest competition to our software, but back then, obviously that's changed now. Yeah. But it's, that didn't even, that took probably another 10 years at least, right? Before, at least, if it wasn't longer.
Yeah. I don't even know how to use a fax machine.
Yeah. Have you seen a rotary phone?
No.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, nobody could get a hold of you unless you were beside your rotary phone, right? Like, yeah. I actually grew up. There was no, the voicemail was a separate machine, a tape recorder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I still, even as I'm driving around, like my degree in geomatics engineering, people are like, well, what is geomatics? Well, I mean, big part of what we were doing back then is the global positioning systems, geospatial information systems. Or I said, use it every day.
Yeah.
It's good, Google Maps, Uber, whatever, all those things, right? It's like ubiquitous in your life.
Yeah.
Now, but yeah, back then, nothing. There's nothing you could do with it. Mm-hmm. There was 2 satellite systems that go around the orbit. One was Russian, one was the American, and they were still, as of 1998, still in the Cold War.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they scrambled the clock. So there was no way of actually doing it.
Wow.
You didn't have the internet, you didn't have the computing power, and the satellite systems were basically locked up.
Wow.
So none of that was even possible.
Okay.
Today, but we could see, you could see it happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it obviously took a long time. So none of those businesses were even possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you think about how an AI is way more transformative.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so you don't even start to think about all the potential businesses that are going to get created off of this. But yeah, to that point, it's like if you're not solving a problem, and it's kind of, obviously solving a problem for one person's one thing, but you just really be solving a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Usually, if one person has it, other people have it too. But yeah, that's the key point. And then obviously as a software company, when you get those anchor customers in there, and they're all telling you, if they're all telling you pretty much the same thing, you're probably onto something.
Yeah. We find your customers are your best product designers.
Yeah.
Right. What you hear boots in the ground is usually what becomes your best feature.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Eric, thanks so much. I mean, this has been so informative. It's great to hear your story. I mean, even knowing you for so many years now, I learned so much more about you, and it's really fascinating.
Yeah, well, thanks. This was an unexpected pleasure.
Yeah.
I didn't know as of a couple of days ago we'd be doing this. It was always fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.